Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's the top of the hour. We want to make sure we get right to it. We're excited to have brought together some wonderful, brilliant minds to talk today about building the workforce of tomorrow. We're going to focus on skills, talent, and opportunity. And with us today is Nate Juice from World Travel and Tourism Council. We have Adam Burke, the president and CEO of Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board. We also have Claude Molinari, who is also president and CEO of Visit Detroit. And I am your host today, Sara Meaney. I'm managing partner of Coraggio Group, and I have the distinct pleasure of speaking with all three of these gentlemen for this hour. So what I'm going to do is a brief introduction on the topic, give a little bit of background, and then what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Nate to share a little bit more about the research itself that prompted this conversation. I'll reflect on some insights and observations based on Coraggio's involvement in this, and also some additional information on some best practices from around the world and maybe closer to home. And then we're going to open it up to Adam and Claude and their perspectives in their communities and how workforce opportunities and challenges are being addressed, both directly by their organizations and together in partnership with their communities. And then we'll open it up to Q&A for the attendees today. So without further ado, I think we will chat. Oh, I'm sorry. Will you go back a moment? My bad. Thank you, producer extraordinaire. I'm going to share just a few minutes of overview. When Coraggio Group and Miles Partnership became involved in this particular research opportunity, we jumped at the chance to partner with World Travel and Tourism Council on this. Of course, we work deeply with the travel and tourism community in many different ways, but the important thing that keeps coming up whenever we're working with destination leaders or travel brand leaders, everyone has concerns with and not always confident about the solutions for how do we ensure the sustainability of our industry when it comes to talent and workforce. This research began and really kicked off in Perth in Western Australia just about 1 year ago at the Global Summit that World Travel and Tourism Council held then. I was in attendance and we did a workshop with the advisory leadership group of WTTC, and we started diving into where the perceived talent and skills gaps are today and where we believe or anticipate that those skills gaps will exist in the future, knowing that things move as quickly as they do. So that exploration in the form of a workshop then translated into a very in-depth research study in partnership with Hong Kong Polytechnic University, including a survey. Nate will go in further into the detail of the methodology and all of that. But the official report launched in Rome in late September, not too long ago at the Global Summit this year. And since then, we've had a lot of interest in the results of this report and this research. And I think people are really thinking about the role that they can and should be playing in workforce development, talent acquisition, and education, particularly for those very young who will be the workforce of tomorrow. So with that, and with that background, now I would love to hand it over to Nate. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thanks for hosting this webinar. That was a great overview of the background to the project. And we were very happy to collaborate with Miles Partnership and Coraggio Group on this very important topic. So if you move on to the next slide, please. So I am delighted to present to you today the findings of this report. The report examines future trends in the workforce as well as opportunities, drawing on global survey, interviews, and data modeling. It was a collaboration between Miles Partnership, Coraggio Group. We also had government involvement, the Ministry of Tourism of Saudi Arabia, as well as the educational institution, which was the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So as you know, travel and tourism is a global powerhouse for growth. In 2024, it supported 357 million jobs, which was 1 in 10 jobs on the planet. And over the next decade, the sector is set to create additional 91 million jobs, which is 1 in 3 of all new jobs on the planet. But in order to unlock the opportunities with this tourism growth, we have to overcome challenges when it comes to skills and labor. But before I show you some of the results, I want to draw attention to methodology. We had a robust methodology. We conducted a survey. You can see here just under 350 valid responses from businesses worldwide. We held a number of interviews with private sector, public sector, and educational institutions. And we also conducted forecast analysis, whereby we looked at demand and supply forecasts for labor for the next decade across 20 economies to determine the gap between demand and supply. On to the next slide, please. So the report focus really is on 4 different pillars. The first one is looking at current employment landscape. We are also looking at key challenges for the future and what skills requirements there will be amongst businesses. As I mentioned already, we conducted labor supply and demand analysis forecasting, and we are also putting forward recommended actions for travel and tourism businesses, public sector, and educational institutions. Now, some of the context. So, COVID devastated the sector, as you know. In 2020 alone, 70 million travel and tourism jobs were lost globally. And even now, with employment levels more or less back to the pre-pandemic levels, we are still seeing shortages amongst many industries of our sector. For example, in hospitality, we are seeing a shortage of chefs and housekeeping staff. A challenge particular to more developing, mature economies is that aging and declining working age population is having a negative impact on the supply of labor. This is putting pressure on employers, which are already struggling to find employees amidst the very low unemployment rates. And globally, tourism growth is outstripping the overall economy and the available labor supply as well. We're also seeing rapid rise of technology and AI, and our survey shows that digital literacy is an important skill set to possess amongst the employees. The next slide, please. We asked our respondents in the survey what they think are the key challenges when it comes to workforce issues. And unsurprisingly, you can see here over half of respondents think that recruiting and retaining talent is the #1 challenge amongst the workforce issues, followed by technological and sustainable practices, which includes preparing for the impact of emerging technologies such as AI, and also retraining and reskilling for new technology. This is followed by employee well-being and inclusion issues such as stress and health issues amongst employees, as well as new working patterns such as managing a remote and global workforce. These are all the issues that businesses have to address. Now, these are some of the results from our demand and supply forecasting analysis, and the results are alarming. We are forecasting over 43 million vacancies across all different skill sets amongst 20 economies by 2035. This represents 16% gap between demand and supply by 2035. And 20 million of these 43 million vacancies will be amongst low-skill jobs. So, like some of the reasons for these vacancies include travel and tourism growth, which is outpacing overall economy and the available labor supply, and also aging populations, which are having an impact on the available workforce. Now, now looking at some of the country level results, here you can see results in terms of absolute values. And so you can see China, India, EU being on top when it comes to absolute vacancies by 2035. This is unsurprising given, large population size in China, India, and EU, and also high workforce volumes. We're also seeing here US with an expected shortage of just under 2 million by 2035. Interesting finding is that all countries in our analysis are forecast to see significant vacancies in the next decade. When we look at relative terms, we see slightly different countries coming on top. We see Japan, Greece, and Germany being on top with between 26 and 29% shortage. This means, for example, for Japan, 29% of its demand will be unfulfilled by 2035. And we know that in Japan, as well as in a number of these countries, population is aging very rapidly, which is putting a pressure on the available labor supply. Moving on, next slide, please. We also looked at skills requirements for the future across different job roles. We split roles into managerial or executive level, operational, and customer-facing roles. And we asked our respondents what they think were the fastest growing skills in importance for the next decade, as well as what they think will be the biggest gaps. So you can see some of the skills here are quite unsurprising, looking at digital literacy coming on top in the next decade, but then followed by some of the softer skills, such as creative thinking, leadership and management is important for executive level roles, lifelong learning, but also emotional and social intelligence. We expect bigger gaps to be in digital literacy and creative thinking over the next decade. Now, looking at, if you move to the next slide, please. Looking at customer-facing roles, we see, again, leadership management coming up on top as the fastest growing skill in importance, followed by, again, technological literacy, and then motivation, self-awareness, creative thinking also coming very high. Again, notable future gap exists for digital literacy, but also for leadership and management in customer-facing roles. And last but not least, looking at operational level roles or behind the scenes, as we call them, biggest gaps existing for lifelong learning, digital literacy, but also we can see here flexibility and resilience coming high in importance over the next decade, as well as creative thinking, again, some of the softer skills. There are opportunities, but in order to tap into those opportunities, we have to tackle labor shortages and skill shortages. And in this report, we have put forward some recommendations for different stakeholders and a number of best practices from across different industries in our sector. So we have to attract young talent by promoting the sector, improving the outward branding of our sector, and also expanding training access. We need to provide leadership programs and clear promotion pathways in order to boost retention. And we have a number of case studies in our report, including for hotels and hospitality. We have to harness technology to boost productivity by providing innovative tools to employees and digital training platforms. Also very important here is enhancing labor mobility within countries and also across international borders by providing more favorable visa regimes. And governments have a role here to play as well. Very important in order to tackle skill shortages is to strengthen business education link, to improve that collaboration between educational institution and private sector. We have to align courses at university with employer needs, and also by providing students and teachers with real-world experiences. Also expanding qualifications by providing more courses and subsidized training. And last but not least, also providing upskilling and lifelong learning throughout everyone's career. And just to recap, our sector is a global powerhouse for growth. It provides opportunities to millions of livelihoods globally. And with right forward planning and by investing in skills, technology, and people, we can ensure that our sector remains resilient and future ready. Thank you.
Nate, thank you so much. You really teed that up beautifully. The research gives all of us a lot to think about, particularly in that set of recommendations. One of the things that I found really the most helpful about the research, I mean, when you first react to the size of the gap and the concern of, how are we going to solve for this gap and the skill challenge, we automatically think, well, how are we even going to deal with this? The report itself does a great job of offering up examples of some of the best practices from around the
Correct.
world. So I encourage people, we'll be sharing another QR code at the end of the webinar so people can access the report and see some of those examples. But I'm also going to dive in now into a few other examples that I thought maybe people might feel closer to home. And as a result, it may inspire, whether you're a DMO, a tour operator, or a hotelier, or someone running a hospitality business. It isn't that you have to solve the challenge alone. It's that you already have some core skills and some capacity that can contribute to a solution in your own community or in your region. So that's where I would like to focus for the next few minutes, to look at and really think about the ways in which we can all kind of take action or gather together and work together towards solutions. So some of the takeaways that I thought were really key from this research are the fact that talent challenges are actually widespread, but the urgency is the part that I really want to underscore. We can talk about, well, 2035, that's 10 years away. It feels like something somebody must be tackling. Well, somebody is us. And if we start now and we think about the workforce of 10 years from now, we may be prompted to reallocate our resources toward youth, toward education, toward training programs. So that piece I really want to underscore, the urgency of starting now. We can't suddenly get there in 10 years and realize, oh, wish I had started a while ago. Two, technology and sustainability are reshaping roles. They're reshaping all of our roles on this call. They change the way we do everyday activities, and they absolutely, technology and a sustainable mindset are completely framing the ways in which our future employees are thinking about their place in the world, how young people use technology now and how they view their place in the world and how important it is to take care of our earth may not align with the old folks in the room, but that is the future of our workforce. And we have to think about what that means to align in recruitment and retention. The skills gap has to be addressed across the sector. That does not necessarily only apply to low skills or executive level positions, but those skills gaps, as Nate's pointed out, exist across all roles and all positions. And so we have to think about what is the shift from A to B that we need to make happen. And for workforce strategies really have to be holistic and inclusive. We can't think narrowly and solve only one part of this problem. We have to think more holistically about what changes in our current systems need to be made, how we need to bring more people into the fold. We need to change who we're talking to and how we show up. And so in those four key takeaways, I think there is a lot of work that all of us can begin tackling as soon as possible. Nate's already touched on this a little bit, but these are those key recommendations that are outlined specifically in the report. Each of those 8 recommendations includes examples from around the world, mini case studies, examples of how these 8 activities play out. But what I'll do is share a couple of new examples that I found kind of interesting in my own outreach. And maybe that will inspire people listening to gather together some resources. First, we'll talk about attracting more young talent. I mean, obviously, the future of our workforce is about the people who aren't yet in it and the people who are. So 3 examples that I thought were great. One happens to be my employer, Miles Partnership, has a program called Leadership Forward. This is about talent we already have on the team and how do we upskill them? How do we advance them to be the managers and directors and leaders of tomorrow? Colorado has a wonderful program that is focused on mentorship And leaders or upcoming leaders in the tourism and travel industry can sign up and be matched with mentors from, frankly, around the country. I have participated as a mentor. My colleague Trevor Cartwright has. Many others participate from across the country as mentors to up and coming leaders in the Colorado sector, which I think is a brilliant way to tap into folks who are willing, interested, and have skills to share. And honestly, Hilton comes up again and again when it comes to some of the best practices. There's a reason why Hilton wins Best Place to Work year after year, and they're a massive global company. So there is an early talent program that I think people can look at and say, what would this look like in a smaller form, in a less corporate form? But there's a lot to learn from there. Next slide. The next is about, facilitating career progression to boost retention. One of the examples I really like is what Tourism Canada is doing, and Tourism HR Canada leads the way on this. As you'll see kind of on the top of those three examples is a campaign that is a website that has a lot of resources as well. So Discover Tourism exists as a campaign. It is about storytelling of people in many different paths in the travel and tourism space, but it also serves as a national job board. It serves as a connector of talent to training programs. It's very well built. It's something worth looking into. The UN Tourism Social Innovation Challenge is an example of entrepreneurship support, right? So it's a bit like a startup incubator type of setting, and individual programs are then awarded with and celebrated, awarded with dollars and celebrated as innovative and to be uplifted. And of course, our educational institutions, NYU, New York University, has a hospitality center, the Jonathan M. Tisch Center for Hospitality, partnered with the AHLA Foundation that partners people up and coming into paid jobs in the sector. So there are career advancing moments. They get paid for the work, and they get degree and certification credit for the hours worked. So it's a great combination of industry, education, and the sector coming together. Next. Ensuring decent working conditions and inclusivity. There are many examples of this all over the country and around the world, but we wouldn't be talking about it if it was universally the case, right? One of the tools we like to use is the Gallup Q12 index. It's a basic survey, but at its core, it is anything but basic. It is a tool for identifying and working on employee engagement. And we may have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit later in this webinar. We are proud winners of the Most Admired Companies in Oregon as Coraggio Group, and Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For. Hilton is named right there. It's far more than fair wages. It's far more than inclusive practices. It's really about ensuring that the place you're asking people to work remains a positive and engaging place to be. So I think those are some interesting examples there. Recommendation 4 moves into technology. Now, talk about a big bucket as a topic. But a couple of things I came across that I thought were really interesting that came up again and again at all scale. One tool called Guild is an online workforce enablement platform, and they have clients of all shapes and sizes. It kind of starts as an example of how do you simplify shift scheduling to save time and be more productive for your supervisors, your managers, if you're a disparate workforce or if you have many different locations. But it also actually creates career pathing goals, access to tuition-free programs. And as you ladder up, you have folks who start as, front desk clerks and become managers of people and into the executive realm. It's a really interesting platform. Obviously, there's a fee associated with all these things, but one of the clients, Hilton is a client of that, but so is Love's. And if you're familiar with what Love's is, Love's runs truck stops and convenience stores along highways and motorways and interstates all over the US, certainly. And they have a lot of shift workers, clearly. But there are folks who start in entry-level jobs, whether they are high school students at the time or adults starting a new career or working in that position. And that program enables Loves to customize pathways for training, certification, degree programs to move people up through the organization and keep them within the organization as well. The other is also a technology-enabled platform called Mentor Click. It connects mentors with mentees. It helps keep people on track. It prompts questions and development opportunities. It's definitely a way where hospitality companies like a Sodexo that basically brings us the food and the supplies to most of our hospitality environments can make those things happen and help bring people along. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the use of AI. AI in a DMO, AI in travel, hospitality, and other tourism businesses is a question more than it is an answer for many people. There's hesitation to use it. There's a lot of use in some spaces. It's always an interesting question to ask yourself, what am I doing as a leader, or what should we be doing as an organization to enable our teams to use AI responsibly and with guardrails, to ensure that it is in alignment with how we want to be leading our organizations and how we serve the people we serve. Next example, recommendation 5 is managing fluctuating workforce demand and enhancing labor mobility. As Nate's mentioned in his commentary, of course, visa policies and immigration policies are on the highest scale a very important piece of this, but you can also work very hyper locally. The example in the top left is from Lapland in northern Finland, where while Finland has positive and proactive visa programs to move from country to country within the EU, Lapland in specific actually has an education center that helps folks from outside of Finland and frankly from outside of the Lapland region to better understand language nuance, cultural nuance, and skills necessary to work effectively in that unique environment, to encourage people to be prepared and be great ambassadors of that place. Blue Mountain Resorts, that's a Canadian resort and ski resort organization. They also cross-train folks to enable people to move through functionality and allow for seasonal job transition. When you're a ski lift operator in the winter, what else can you do and still remain within Blue Mountain? Next recommendation. Strengthening collaboration between business and education providers. Here's another example. Columbia College, which is a California based community college, has a very specific certification and registered apprenticeship program for folks in the travel, tourism, and hospitality space. I think it creates a really good opportunity to kind of dive in and see how are they doing it. But really, it's about the connection to the businesses that are willing to hire and train on the job and pay for that work while folks are being certified and getting credit towards certification. That's an important example of that kind of a partnership. And then this example, Boredom is Fired, is a campaign and a resource platform that Visit Denver has created for its regional workforce. It starts as a campaign, but there's also stories and connections to folks who are chefs, folks who are managers of hospitality services in hotel chains, folks who open, are entrepreneurs and open bars and restaurants, and really telling that story, connecting jobs to people, and helping folks have access to those learning opportunities, and frankly, reframing the story of the experience of the travel and hospitality space. Recommendation 7, improving the provision of travel and tourism qualifications. 2 examples from the US. One is Choose Chicago and Choose Chicago's foundation. The grant and scholarship awards are focused on identifying and uplifting students from generally underserved and underrepresented populations in the Chicagoland area, enabling students to learn more about careers in hospitality, but also giving them scholarships so they can attend programming and certification and degree programs to move them into and up and through the industry as well, increasing access. And the example top left, the state of West Virginia tourism agency has a really innovative program, particularly at the statewide level. It's called Tourism Works. And it has 3 different aspects, but ultimately what West Virginia tourism was able to achieve with generous grant funding at the state level was creation of new certification programs, creation of educational pathways, and training for community-based individuals wanting to get into either a new job, find employment, and have access to hospitality positions. It also has funding available for people already working within destination organizations and hospitality businesses. So it really kind of works on 3 different levels. It's a really great example of a statewide initiative, I think. And recommendation 8, upskilling and lifelong learning across sectors. 2 organizations in our space that many of you are probably very familiar with. Destinations International obviously sets the standard for and provides certification both at the beginning of the career, right? And all the way up and through to executive level. Taught peer-to-peer and also outside of class learning. It's really wonderful, and it offers so many different pathways for folks. But in the European space, City Destinations Alliance is very skilled at bringing people together so that peers with each other can identify best practices, share those best practices, and learn from each other. Slightly less formal educational programming than in the Destinations International example, but it's another format. Now, why couldn't we take some of those things and create those regionally, whether through a network or locally through our partners and our community? So those are some additional examples on top of what you'll find in the report itself. And with that, I would love to turn it over to the people who are making some of these things happen in their destinations in real time. So Adam, Claude, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to throw some questions at you if you are ready.
Ready?
Claude, do you mind? Yeah, great. Thanks, Adam. Claude, do you mind if I start with you? You're on mute, so it might help if you come off mute, but
I unmute. It's only been since the pandemic that I've had to do
I
this.
know.
Yeah.
I wish we had $1 for every time someone had to tell us to come off mute, right? It changed everything. So we have the honor and privilege of working with you and your team. Coraggio Group and Visit Detroit and Miles Partnership have created all sorts of different programs together, but your leadership of the community and of Visit Detroit, the organization, has really demonstrated a long-term commitment to both equitable and inclusive talent development and bringing people into the fold. One example I would love to hear a little bit more about is your involvement in the DELP program, or the Diversity Executive Leadership Program. I believe that's administered through ASAE now, but can you tell us a little bit more about how that came to be and how that serves to advance the workforce in your region?
Yeah, so DELP is a great program that we've partnered with ASAE for the last 25 years. And it is really to propel minority candidates to the C-suite level. And we've had great success with over 400 of these candidates moving up to that top level. But, you know, also we've got a challenge in Detroit where between almost 3 out of every 4 people between the ages of 16 and 24 are not either in school or employed. And so we saw there's a real opportunity to leverage these DELP scholars, you know, because again, Detroit being the largest majority city in the country, we started a program with our DELP students, or our DELP leaders, to mentor these young students. And so that they get an opportunity to meet with people who are they see themselves in these people who can also are moving up in the hospitality field, becoming CEOs and vice presidents and marketing officers and things along those levels. And that's really a great way to introduce people and to expose people to maybe an opportunity they wouldn't have otherwise. And so we found that there's a great chance to bring up that workforce, and it's been very successful.
That is a fantastic example. What role, so how has Visit Detroit played a role in that? Obviously, for 25 years is a very long time for it to be so successful. How does Visit Detroit show up in that right now? And what does that mean for others that they could learn from?
Well, every year we host a DELP reunion where we have scholars who are currently in the program as well as alumni come to Detroit, and they get CEU credits while doing this. And it's also, again, that opportunity to work with our young students in workforce development, because I think that's a really critical piece of DELP, is paying it forward and bringing people onto that next level and giving people the opportunity to see, because I think you have to be a real genius to imagine something that hasn't been done. But once you are exposed to or experience something, think I could see myself doing that. I can put myself in that position. And then once you're in, then there's limitless possibilities across the board for things that a student or an aspiring person wants to do that can take them to a different level, change the trajectory of their life, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that example. It's very inspiring. I hope others try and do similar things. Adam, I'd love to move over to you for a moment. One of the most amazing things I think about your leadership style and about the organization, how you lead the LA Tourism organization, is how much you care and how much that shows up in the way you program your employee engagement and your training and all of those things. And so I think that commitment to workplace culture is a hallmark of LA Tourism. So can you talk a bit about the reasons that you've made that commitment and ongoing investment into employee engagement, and perhaps some of the ways that you've seen it pay off?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And the first thing I'll say is, I by no means purport to think that LA Tours has all the answers. I think one concept we need to all embrace is the idea we are not competing for talent, we are collaborating for talent. And, I look at leaders like Claude and so many others across the industry. We're all trying to figure this out together. So, I'm honored to have the chance to participate, but believe me, I'm stealing great ideas from all over the industry globally. I think the reason why, and you mentioned it earlier, I'm a big believer in the old Peter Drucker quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have the greatest strategy in the world, but you don't have a healthy workplace culture, you're going to have a much harder time both attracting and retaining team members. And I'm a huge advocate of the Gallup Q12 methodology for several reasons. For those of you maybe who aren't as familiar with it, it's been around for 4 decades plus. And you're talking about a sample size of tens of millions of workers all around the world. So this is, very, very statistically valid data. And one of the most disturbing things that shows is not just in our industry, but across the board, the majority of the global workplace is not actively engaged in their work. It's not just a matter of, coming there and doing the job. We need team members who have passion for the job, who feel like they're being professionally fulfilled. So I think one of the most important things we need to do is listen. I'll give a full-throated defense of millennials and Gen Z, because I think as our workforce has gotten younger, I've certainly heard, and I think Claude, you've heard the same, some of our colleagues say, I just don't know how to work with this demographic. The reality is, I don't think it is true in the least that they're unmotivated. They're just motivated by different things. And one of the single most important things that they're motivated by is professional development and growth. And I'm not just talking about promotional opportunities. That's more that they feel that we see them as individuals. We really lean in on things like Clifton Strengths in partnership with the Gallup Q12, because that gives us an opportunity to flatten the organization and say, you know what, we really want to meet each team member where they are and really focus on what their professional development objectives are. Because I think that's the single biggest point of sustainable competitive advantage any organization can have. since the vast majority of organizations do not have an engaged workforce, if you really focus on that, you are going to have a high performing team. So that's the single biggest reason we engage in it, is because if we can really meet people where they are and create the right professional development opportunities, we find that has opened the doors to much more creative thinking, more innovation, more of an entrepreneurial mindset, and candidly, even upskilling those of us who are getting a little long in the tooth, right? I mean, we've got younger people who have a lot to teach us about AI and the emerging technologies that we're dealing with.
Mhm. Great example, and thank you. And I can attest to the level of commitment that Adam and the LA tourism team have. You absolutely live and breathe the story of Gallup Q12, and that engagement drives positive performance and positive work environment. And that's a really important part of some of the recommendations that the research study reinforces. It's one thing to say we're all going to be competing for talent. It's another to say we're actually going to be competitive to get the talent that may choose a different sector, right? We have a responsibility as leaders in travel and tourism to imagine how will we make our roles, our jobs, our organizations more attractive than those who may actually pay more. We need to understand that and apply that in our everyday workplace. So that's a great example. This is actually going to be a question for both of you, Adam and Claude. But Claude, I'll direct it to you first. Do you have some examples of ways in which your organization or maybe partners in the community are working directly with local or regional educational institutions to begin that training early, whether it's K through 12, high school, post-secondary, ways that is creating feeder talent, planting the seed early, right? The story of why does one person end up in one career path versus another? I'd love to hear from you, Claude, about some of that work or your perspective on that in Detroit.
Yeah, we have a great partnership with Cristo Rey High School, which is located in a what's called Mexican town of Detroit. And we've had a great partnership with that, where every year we take between 5 and 7 of these interns that work all year. And what I'm really thrilled about is over the last 4 years, we've hired 3 of those people to be full-time employees of Visit Detroit. And it was cool because it's like a try me before you buy me on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get a chance to really look at this and decide, is this something you want to be a part of? And then you get a chance, and they get a chance to, or we get a chance to decide, is this the kind of teammate that we want on our team? And I think those are really critical pieces to this. And again, when you're training this talent, you bring it up, and then they come through, they're already part of your culture right from the start. And I love what Adam was saying about that culture, because it is so critical. I meet with every employee that is hired at Visit Detroit, and I always tell them the same thing. Like, no matter how good your skills are, if you're not a great teammate, you can't stay here. I will remove you. Like, I'm just telling you straight up. If that scares people, I'm sorry, but like, you've got to be a great teammate in your account with your fellow teammates. You have to have a lot more deposits than withdrawals. If you're always getting somebody to do stuff for you, that just doesn't work. And I'll just share with that, through Miles and Miles Partnership and Coraggio Group, we've really done some digging deep work, almost like therapy. I joked with Jen O'Connor and Melissa Cherry this week when we were doing our latest strategic initiative. It's almost like a trip to the dentist. I'm not looking forward to it, but I know I'm going to be better off for doing it. And we've gotten great results. And I think, as you've seen, our net promoter score went from like, it's all right to work there, to just below world class. And I'm thrilled in our next strategic initiative. We're like, we want to be world class. And we're not that far. I mean, it's this close. And I think that is because we're investing in our team. And if we're not investing in our team is not going to be good to be ambassadors for Detroit and Southeast Michigan.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that plug. I'm really glad to hear that you appreciate the tough love that
And it is tough.
brings,
That's a tough mirror I have to look into sometimes.
brings up, brings that change along with it. So that's awesome. Adam, I'd love your take on that same question about any specific partnerships or collaborations with education institutions and programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is there are some fundamental structural obstacles in our industry that I think Claude, you've done a phenomenal job of addressing it, but it's really about casting a broader net. When I talk to colleagues who are responsible for some of the major hospitality programs, they're contending with declining enrollment. We really have to start much younger. I think this is really thinking about the full life cycle of exposing people to our industry and making sure they understand the breadth and depth of it. When I talk to most young people, they have a very narrow definition of what they think travel and tourism is. And I think part of it is there's a beautiful point of intersectionality between you've got these incredible high potential students, particularly from the junior and community college system, and particularly in LA from historically underserved communities. And there are absolutely industries that are doing a great job of tapping into a younger demographic. Interesting, the example I will give that kind of shame on us collectively. There is one industry out there that is doing a phenomenal job at a much younger age, talking to people about if you join our industry, you will have the opportunity to progress through your career. You'll have the opportunity to travel, to see the world. You'll have the opportunity to help, get college assistance. And it's the US military. The US military is out promoting the travel and tourism industry on the notion that these are incredible jobs that do not require a traditional four-year degree, have incredible growth potential, and give you the opportunity really to travel the world as part of what you do professionally. We need to start rethinking the way we promote our industry. But I think part of that is you need to create points of entry. One of the things we focused on was really scrubbing implicit bias out of our application process, because I think unintentionally we were guilty of the fact that because we have a younger workforce, we have some people who are promoted into managerial positions by virtue of technical aptitude, but we need to equip them with the supervisory skills. And as a result, we found that a lot of people were overshooting when they were hiring for candidates. So there are questions like, does someone really need a traditional four-year degree for this job? You're hiring for a coordinator in brand marketing. Does someone really have to have a degree from a four-year institution? Does someone really need to have 8 to 10 years of experience? And along with our head of HR, one of the things we did is we went through our application process and realized that completely unintended, we were eliminating a huge swath of candidates who just need an opportunity. So that was number one. And the second thing was partnering with local schools on a paid apprenticeship program. And the reason I say paid apprenticeship is one of the things we found. Most of these kids, incredibly, high growth potential, are already working a full-time job while they're going to school. They cannot take an unpaid internship. So by offering a $60,000 a year job so we can pay kids a living wage, they have the opportunity to be embedded with our membership program and really learn about the full breadth of the industry, because membership is at really kind of the center focal point of everything we do as a DMO.
Awesome examples. Thank you so much, Adam, for that. And both of you had great insights there. I would love to bring Nate's on camera as well, if our producer extraordinaire can bring him back in there. Thank you. Hi, Nate's. The next question I actually would love to ask all three of you, and it's kind of based on the one big idea. I mean, if we could remove all of the typical limitations on us, right? What's our budget? What policy limitation might make it impossible or maybe unfavorable for us to make one big move? What would your one big move be for each of the three of you to really make a dent in a sustainable and engaged workforce of the future for our sector? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll jump in.
Please.
I think for me it would be when we look across the industry globally right now, there are a lot of efforts around workforce that are siloed. I think for us to be effective, if I could wave a magic wand, it would be to create one unified effort that brings together all industry sectors. Because if we're really going to capture a younger generation of talent for our industry, I think we really need to look at it collaboratively and be able to share best practices. So I think for me, it would be eliminate the silos, and the ownership of this needs to be collective. And a group like WTTC is a great starting point for that.
Right. The
couldn't agree more.
heterogeneity. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nate.
No, I couldn't agree more. I definitely think, more collaboration between different associations, private sector, public sector, and educational institutions. And one of the key challenges we've been hearing about from our interviewees was that there was not enough alignment between education institutions and private sector. So when students come out of universities or schools, they're not prepared for real life work. So, basically better alignment between different stakeholders.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great. And Adam, I just wanted to comment on the heterogeneity of the industry, which I think actually holds the industry back in so many ways, not just in the workforce space. The world doesn't see travel and tourism as a single industry. Right? Much less the folks working within it. If you work in hotel and hospitality, you don't see yourself necessarily connected to the people who are running restaurants and entertainment venues or a destination organization, right? This is our problem to solve. And who better to solve it than people who are great storytellers, conveners of people, and connectors of resources. I mean, this is what the industry does so well. So I think it's a call to action right there. So I think that was a great example. Claude, what are your thoughts?
I would love to see hospitality and tourism academies all across the nation at a certain, and from like, let's say the middle of junior high to through high school, where it'd be, tuition covered and you're going to be in this industry, and maybe like you treat it like the military academy where like you have to do, if you graduate, you don't have to pay us back if you do like 5 years in the destination world, of something in hospitality. I think that, again, I think that if we can eliminate as many blockages to the entry, I think that gives people the opportunity to grow and flourish. And so, for me, I think that would be wonderful if we could do something along those lines. And I think, one of the big challenges we have, especially I think in the United States, is just like our state and federal government doesn't recognize the importance of travel and tourism. Like they think it just kind of happens, and that it doesn't need to be marketed. And Detroit and Michigan is the motor capital of the world. I shared this with our governor and state reps, and they were shocked. Just hospitality and tourism in Southeast Michigan is the equivalent of selling 235,000 Jeep Grand Cherokees. Okay. That's 35,000 more than they sold last year. And that's a top 10 selling vehicle in the United States of America. And if someone was to come and say, we're going to bring an auto plan to any nation, any state in this country, they'd be like, here's $1 billion, go get it, And yet, funding and what you're seeing with Brand USA and some of the other things, I just think it's like they don't recognize just how huge this industry is. And if it was supercharged appropriately and treated well, how much more it could do for this country.
Wonderful example, Claude. And wow. Jeep Grand Cherokee, huh?
Yeah, and I would build off that, Claude, because I think you're exactly right. I think, when you even use the word tourism, some people think about that as just leisure visitation. People don't necessarily think of professional meetings and events. They don't think about arts and culture. They don't think about some of the other things that make up our industry. And I think we really need to, and I think US Travel Association, a number of other associations have done a much better job of this over the last decade. But we really are one of the nation's leading industries. And that's one of the things we've been talking a lot about is, do we need to start talking about ourselves as being the visitor industry rather than tourism? Because we need to start shifting perception. Because to your point, historically we had a $53 billion trade surplus from tourism. That is now on its way to being a $70 billion deficit. So in terms of the imperative for our national economy and our global economy, we have to foundationally start rethinking this. And Claude, you said something earlier that I don't want to gloss over. I think it was a brilliant point, which is we all have to really lean in on career advancement. I'll pick on, as a hotel guy, I spent 2/3 of my career in the hotel side of the business. I always cringe when I see a general manager put their arm around someone and say, this is so-and-so, they've been a room attendant with us for 30 years.
Yeah.
Now, is that the message we should be sending, right? I don't think we've ever structurally addressed the fact that for people who don't meet a certain profile, we have not created the career advancement potential. And I think that's why we've seen a younger generation say, I think like there's an artificial ceiling there. And Claude, what you've done in Detroit, I think is an exemplar that everyone should follow, because without creating that vertical career pathing, we can get them in the door, but we're going to lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, it's almost like in Major League Sports where you're like we could buy somebody off the free agent market, but we'd be so much better off if our #1 draft pick or our #6 draft pick actually moved their way up. And again, every once in a while, I have to be, I just recently brought in a COO, but he's a bridge person. And I said, this person's not replacing me, and they're not like, and they don't aspire to. They're going to be here for about 3 years, and then there's 3 of you here that I expect is going to replace that person. And I just think that's always, that bringing people in with the idea that, and frankly, we try to hire for that too. Like if you aspire to stay at this level, maybe this isn't the career, because we don't want job people. We want career people. We want somebody who wants to someday say, you know what, it might be a huge stretch, but I want Claude's job one day, because I can guarantee when I joined this industry and I was cleaning floors, I was like, one day I aspire to do something else. And it just, and you kind of, it's like a path forward. But I agree with you, that hope, nothing sells like hope. And if you can see it, like I see the ladder, all right, there's some slippery steps. I got to make some moves here, but there's an opportunity. I think that's really where, again, people can flourish and move forward. And I appreciate your kind words.
And we're encountering similar challenges here in Europe as well, in the UK as well as continental Europe. I think the key really is to improve the perception of our sector, improve the outward branding, which includes, which you both mentioned, clear career progression opportunities. But also people don't realize there are so many different professions within travel, which includes engineers, lawyers, economists, real estate professionals, as well as, of course, like all the traditional hospitality professions as well. People do confuse travel and tourism with hospitality, but there are so many different industries which are part of the sector and need to be understood better.
Excellent.
And Nate's building off of that, Sarah, something that you and Coraggio have done a fantastic job helping us with is really taking Clifton's strengths and the work with Gallup and putting the two together. Because what I love about Clifton's strengths is it really allows you to create non-traditional career pathways for people. When you think about it, we're all relatively small organizations, and some of us have pretty long tenured teams. So if you look up above you and you say, well, that person's not going anywhere, people don't often see that pathway, but we're really leaning in on strengths. What we're able to find is there are people who can move to different departments within the organization and continue their career progression in a way they hadn't thought of. We've had people move from sales to HR. We've had people move from marketing to ops. And I think what the work you've done with us and helping to leverage Clifton strengths also meets a younger generation's desire for professional development and growth.
Right. Thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the storytelling, Nates, that you're talking about is something that in pockets, I think we're seeing it done really well. The challenge, of course, of whatever organization is going to lead that effort, whether it's a campaign or a storytelling endeavor or a job connection online community, is resources, it's dollars, it's prioritization. Because it isn't that our organizations don't have dollars, it's that in every instance, we have to make choices. If you rob Peter to pay Paul, what are we not doing over here? But ultimately, the connective tissue of that story is we have to also be tellers of the story, that our role is not only as marketers, it is as community developers, it is as talent developers. And in those roles, we then can maybe carve a path to change the storyline from how do we see tourism being successful? It's only more room nights sold, or it's only more economic impact. And in reality, it's a much more holistic set of metrics that we need to be looking at and thinking about. And those metrics include people and humans and the people who work in those jobs and the communities that those amenities serve.
Yeah, yeah.
So
This is one of the key goals of WTTC as well. So
yeah, exactly. I'm very aware of the fact that we are nearly at time. I see some great comments in the chat. Thanks, everyone. It sounds like the Jeep Grand Cherokee example landed really well, Claude. It really changes the narrative, doesn't it? And I know some folks are really commenting on the fact that these are nuggets of brilliance, just as I knew that it would be. The Q&A doesn't even have to be open. People can put comments into the chat. We won't have a lot of time to answer questions. Hopefully the questions that we already addressed prompt you to either reach out to any of the panelists for more information. Absolutely. If we can go to the final slide, we do want to make that download available. You can get it either from the WTTC website directly, or the executive summary is available on the Coraggio website. All you have to do is contact us. We'll point you in the right direction. Feel free to send questions our way. Feel free to reach out with your own examples from your own community. We would like to continue to gather these best practices over time. The only way we can all get better at this is from learning from each other and seeing the successes as they happen. And this work is going to continue for the next 10 years and beyond. And today's the day to begin, because if you don't start today, you'll wish you had. Thank you all so much for your time, your energy, your brilliance, and your passion that you bring to this industry. How can we get involved in supporting these initiatives to be collective? That's a wonderful, wonderful question, Nicole. I'm wondering whether it's something that maybe collectively can be brought to US Travel, or maybe another national or regional organization where maybe there is an initiative that could be created. Workforce needs to bump up in our priority. Otherwise, we're not going to have priorities left to play with, right? So thank you all for your time. Thanks for attending. And for those of you watching this later, thanks for making time for us. Thank you all. Take care.
thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.